Deathloop, a 100 grams of fresh mushrooms trip report, posted to shroomery.org by 4Trouble, 12 years and 11 months ago. This is just a warning to those who want to try adventurous dosages one day. A little background about me that may relate a bit to my trip. I've always been taking 3 to 4 grams of dried cubensis for all my mushroom trips. I've not had a single bad one so far. I have a very average life, work full time, barely any family issues, no financial issues either. Kinda low on the social side, but not a hermit. A bit depressed from lack of soulmate, but not due to physical outlook. Fit body with average look. Mundane, but manageable overall. 11 PM, 0 hours. I took a 45 gram fresh monster fruit from my fruiting chamber, 2 inches in diameter and a thick 10-inch stem. Cubensis Nepal Chitwan, if that matters, grew on Thai red rice grains. 11:45 PM, 45 minutes in. This usually kicks in within 30 minutes, but there was no effect so far, so I thought I didn't take enough, and assumed the weight was due to the humid chamber, completely forgetting that I had a heavy meal 3 hours prior. I take a cluster of 3 smaller mushrooms, weighing about a total of 60 grams fresh. 11:50 PM, gagging without nausea. I realise that the first dose now is about to kick in, and I know that I may have a bit of trouble later, but I try not to get too worried about it. 12 AM. I'm starting to really feel it now. I'm listening to some NES music such as B-Wing. There are lots of visuals and a very happy mood. 1:15 AM. Effect in full blast. Repeating the tunes, giggling like a child, dancing. I keep thinking that maybe I took a bit too much, but I am enjoying it. And it's going to be a night, but 4 to 5 more hours ain't too bad, I guess. 1:30 AM. I remembered reading somewhere that a shower while tripping is good, so I jump in the tub and blast myself with warm water. 2 AM. The shower felt great. I got into the clockwork mode and kept seeing the shower head, then the left wall, then to the tower behind me, then to the curtain, then back to the shower head, basically spinning in an anti-clockwise fashion once in a while. I kept repeating, I took way too much. The mushroom is completely owning me. It's bad to eat this non-nutritious stuff. Over and over and over again. 2:30 AM. The water heater went off since it's been an hour. I think it's some sort of safety mechanism. It really scared me, but I shut the water off and sat in the tub. I was pretty thirsty right now, so I kept drinking from the faucet by having it on lightly. Still only cold water coming out. The faucet was leaning sideways, and water seemed to come out from the air about 10 inches away. My vision was completely messed up at this point. I had no idea what was real and what wasn't. 3 AM. I lost the sense of time completely by now. I can't even grasp the idea of a tomorrow even happening. I don't remember where I'll work and what I do, but I can only remember my salary. I can almost remember my parents and 3 to 4 friends in my head, and I'm really sorry for what I have done. No one will be home for a month. The DEA will take me away and my life is screwed. I should have never touched this amount of mushrooms. But I would still rather have a police officer come and arrest me, because if I die in that state, I'll be heavily decomposed by the time someone finds out. The funny thing about that moment was that although I preferred that experience, I didn't fear death. 3:30 AM. I crawled out of the tub somehow and then fell to the ground, sort of half laying down, half collapsed. I knew I had the power to get back up, but in my mind, everything was reversing, very, very slowly, frame by frame, and I was acting to it, slowly getting up and playing a slapstick motion. 4:30 AM. The Deathloop. I gained control of my thoughts briefly and managed to walk out into the living room. Then, I stood in the middle, and at that moment, I completely lost my thoughts again. I experienced ego death for the first time ever, and it went into a repeating loop. I didn't even have a concept of me. There is no God right now. I never believed in God, and I still don't after the experience. I looked at my shoes on the floor, then the couch, then the TV, then some Egyptian painting, and then back to my shoes. This pattern then just stuck in my head and looped on me. I felt that I am no longer a person. It's probably from the ego death, but there was no reminder about death in my head at the time. I was just an entity, and I thought that I will eternally see this pattern over and over again. The fear I received from this is just indescribable, and some of the near-death experiences I've had, like coma from falling the stairs, bad electric shocks, near falls from high elevations, etc., just cannot compare to what I went through. 6 AM. I'd finally gained my consciousness by now, and I was completely amazed that the loop had lasted over 90 minutes. I took a glimpse at the clock at 4:30 AM. That was before I lost my mind and then forgot it along with sense of time when I got in the loop. I was in a total state of shock and confusion, and I didn't even know how to feel glad that I am out of it finally. I felt especially cold, but was too confused to wear clothes or take a hot shower, so I just lay down on my bed and passed out. 2:30 PM, 15 hours and 30 minutes after dosing. I wake up. Sometimes I get these hangover headaches from mushroom trips, but I didn't get one this time. The living room and bathroom was still very wet and a bit messy, but I managed to not damage anything. I was really reluctant to do anything. I have to work the following day. I did not want to get sick. So, I decided to go out to get something to eat, as well as a smoke. For the next 4 to 5 hours, I was still in a heavily confused state, and was hesitating on anything I did. It's been a day now, and I've totally recovered. I am willing to take mushrooms again, but never over a sensible amount, like 50 grams fresh or 5 grams dried would be max for me from now on. Luckily, I don't remember the fear of the loop anymore, but the idea that I'll forever see a looping image as some afterlife entity still terrifies me. For some reason, with all the bad thoughts I received during the trip, I never had a panic attack at all. I also remember I had several bad and good teachings, ideas and emotions, but the bathtub and living room experience just overwhelmed them, and I can't remember the others. Usually on extreme trips like this, I get some sort of meaningful or even life-changing lesson out of it, but the only thing I got out of it this time is that I should take caution on what I put in my mouth. Be careful on your dosing, and think twice before you redose if your first dose was big. This was the very first time I'd experienced such an intense loop. So far with mushrooms, I've only had these clockwork effects and minor loops on some thoughts, so I wanted to share this experience I went through. I hope this post was interesting and informative to some people. So there's a few things we can take away from this report. I know you guys like the extreme dosages when it comes to these mushroom videos, and I enjoy sharing them as well. I think this is a good case study in the fact that you don't need to be taking 100 grams of fresh cubensis to have a spiritual experience. In fact, the experience that this guy had, it was pretty tame in comparison to some of the mystical, transcendent experiences I've covered where people just take like sub 5 grams, say like 2 grams. Just shows you that the set and setting and your life experience, your brain chemistry, has a lot more to do with the experience than just the amount you take. Obviously, you can have a greater guarantee to have a mystical, visionary experience if you have, say, quite a large dose of mushrooms, but it's not always a guarantee, especially depending on your personality, your attitude towards life, and how much psychedelic experience you have, and how closed or open-minded you actually are. I don't know anything about this guy, but it seems that he had a lot of paranoia and fear in his mind in this experience. He intuited or interpreted his ego death in sort of a cynical manner, which if anybody who's had an actual ego death, a full, pure ego death knows, is that it's possibly the most blissful, loving, refreshing experience you can ever have. It completely lifts all the weight off your shoulders that you've had throughout your whole life. It's absolutely beautiful and indescribable. So even though he probably had a glimpse of an ego death, I wouldn't say that he actually went the full mile, because if he really did, this report would have been worded a lot differently. Like he says, probably the main takeaway from this is that it doesn't need to be taking amounts this ridiculous. You can have sufficiently profound experiences on far lower doses. I know I have. I would never be inclined to take this amount. It's just completely unnecessary. Another thing to note is that taking this amount of mushrooms, these super heavy doses, is very different to taking, I don't know, a higher dose of DMT or a higher dose of LSD, not within the 1000 UG range, because that also would have some similarities with taking this extreme of a dose. It's just too much for the average human mind, or even I'd say 99% of the human minds, even people who are completely into psychedelics and spirituality and mysticism. It's just far too much for the human ego to take. The really beautiful aspects of psychedelics are often overshadowed by the loopy, strange, sort of magical aspect of the mushrooms that will take you to places you didn't even realise exist, which your ego is just not prepared for. And it's more likely that the trip will go in some unexpected direction than, say, if you wanted to do a heavy dose of 5 grams, like doing the classic Terence McKenna method of sitting in a dark room with 5 grams of mushrooms. Even though it is going to be an intense experience, it's a lot more controlled than just being like, oh, I'm just going to eat 100 grams of fresh cubensis and see where it takes me, because it will take you places that maybe you don't want to go and that you're not prepared for, at least in a controlled fashion, where you set an intention, set a mantra, etc., where you're like, oh, I know that this could possibly lead me down some strange paths, but I'm ready to experience anything and accept it, is a lot more beneficial for your trips and your personal development than just going in blind and hoping that the experience takes you down a path of personal development, because it's not always guaranteed. Obviously, this is completely relative. For some people it might work better, where they're like, oh, I just need to let the mushrooms take control and show me what I need to do. But for those who've already had experience of psychedelics and want to take things further, it really does help to contemplate on something that you want to hone in on and understand, like I've talked in my setting your intentions for a psychedelic trip. So yeah, just some few takeaways from that. I wouldn't recommend doing this at all. It's very reckless, and to be honest, this guy's very lucky that things didn't take a darker turn for him. He could have ended up ripping his clothes off and running around naked in the streets getting arrested, and let me fucking tell you, I know how that feels like. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and more reports coming in the week. Happy to be back from Poland to be delivering the goods. So yeah, look forward to that, and I'll see you in the next one.